Okay, thank you, Heather. Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Yeah.
So I watched your class,
Uh-huh.
and thank you for having me in there. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for coming in.
You're welcome. Tell me about your class, reflect on it, and let me know how you thought it went.
Okay, so you watched you observed me for the first lesson. So I came across that it's too rush for me to get them things done.
Mhm.
So for this, the second time, I just slow down a bit and I give them time to collaborate and giving feedback. And I don't really rush them from being like doing the brainstorming. So at least they have more time to talk about it. And this is actually was the first time I have my fourth grader to collaborate in a project. So that's why I have to like let them know before how you have a good collaboration with your friends. And then I group them in the way that they have talented and average and also low level. So I grade them like this. So do you see that I have my Excel spreadsheet on the wall? So that's the way I group them. So and then after that, I think they really talk about things they have learned from the past two lessons. And then the things that I didn't really do it really well is like I did go to team, like group to groups, like to check on them, but I don't really know how to ask a really high order question.
Sorry.
Like yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So things like that, it's kind of hard for me to like to do it. And I think they can learn something from me. It's just that maybe not so into a deeper thought of the higher order thinking of creating art. So this is the part that I missed. And overall, they are quite. They listen to me and they really follow the procedure very well in class. So I think it's okay. Maybe next time I have to really use my questions to ask them so that they can do some problem solving skills, they can enhance on their critical thinking skill, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a little bit hard for me because relate art to this type of thinking, you need to really have a lot of experience with them.
Right.
So they can think of that. If they don't have that kind of experience, they may not get it.
Okay. So those higher. So what you're saying is, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're worried that these higher order questions might be too difficult for them because they're not quite at that level yet in their art.
Yeah, maybe at other subject they are really good at that, but in art they need to have a lot of experiences, a lot of like hands-on to really have that kind of thinking. Because like mixed media art, if you never come across mixed media, you don't know anything about mixed media. But if you have explored a lot, like you done experiment, you look at the video, things like that, you see the demonstrations, you have the experiment on that, then you know that, oh, I can just mix and match. So if they don't have the kind of experiment or experiences, they cannot relate the questions, like how to do it, how to create one, things like that.
I see what you're saying. So some of the things that you might be able to do to help them with their higher order thinking skills is that really, if you're looking at depth of knowledge, you move down from questions that are right there, that are just easily answered. You could basically put them on an A, B, C, D format, and they be able to pick and choose the answer. So that's kind of like a level one. But when you start getting a little bit deeper in the depth of knowledge, you ask them questions that they have to think, analyze, maybe synthesize, those type of things.
Yeah.
But even though they haven't had some of this experience in art, they've had experiences in other places. So just asking them, how was this like a science experiment? And let them kind of go in and start thinking about like science. They're exploring things. They're discovering how these different methods make different types of strokes, and they look different on the paper. And can you analyze that? What does that teach you? How do you, and that type of thing. So just by asking them questions that don't have a straightforward answer, that there's multiple right answers, then you're right there in the depth of knowledge. So that might be something that you could look at. And so hopefully that's helpful. So I hear what you're saying, but I think you probably are asking more depth of knowledge questions than you think you are. They just may not be specifically exactly in the art. Like, how does this relate to what, how does this show you what Cézanne did compared to what Picasso did or something, and then this is a bad example, but maybe they don't know that, but they might be able to relate it to other things in their life or in school.
So you need to know the culture of the students to really let them know that how I can connect the real life experiences into the art that they are making.
Right.
Yeah, it's really hard.
It is, especially as an art teacher, you don't always collaborate with the other teachers.
Yeah.
You're kind of a lone wolf in the school where you're collaborating with other specialist teachers, but not always with homeroom teachers and science teachers and that type of thing. Yeah. But anyway, that might just be something that could help you.
Do you have any feedback for me to improve?
Well, let's go over your in-house standards, and I'll go over what you said, and then the comments that I made, and that type of thing. So I was really impressed with your lesson. It was a pleasure being in your classroom. And so here we're going through. So these are the ones for 1, 2, and 3, and there's several different boxes that we can talk about. And you're doing well. You are meeting these. Most of this is about are you meeting the needs of these children developmentally and socially, and then within the culture? And yes, you are. You understand the culture that they're in and their developmental needs. So here it says, does the candidate use knowledge about students' growth and development to design and implement developmentally appropriate challenging learning experiences? Okay, so you create and implement developmentally appropriate instruction to take into account the students' individual strengths and interests. You already said that you did that. So one of the things with the strengths is that these kids are advanced, these kids are still learning, and these ones, they just need a lot of help. So you group them so that maybe you can spend a little bit more time with these guys, just check in on them, and then these ones the lesson that you gave them is going to help them a little bit more. So you have these instructional strategies that reflect your understanding of how students construct knowledge and acquire skills and develop disciplined thinking process to promote student learning. So on that, the PowerPoint that you have given, I think in some ways hits this because you are giving the students the information right there on the board. So you're not only giving it to them verbally, but you're also giving it to them in writing and visually. So there's 3 different modes of communication that these students are able to process the information. And I think that shows that you really know language learners, they need all of this different stimulus. So we have that. Okay, so does a candidate create a positive classroom climate by making students feel valued for each other? Yes, absolutely. In your PowerPoint, you had, this is how students collaborate. This is what good collaboration looks like. This is what it sounds like. And you went through and you gave them examples of this is what we're supposed to do when we're working in a group. You absolutely have that. Okay, so does the candidate use knowledge about individual differences in diverse cultures to develop inclusive learning environment that supports students in meeting high standards. So I think because this is probably one that everybody has to, and even in here, kind of talking about that a little bit with meeting high standards, and then like you had even said, I don't know if I'm meeting with depth of knowledge, things and this type of thing.
Yeah, it's very hard like to differentiate learning.
Right.
You know, like go into students.
And you have them in different groups, but they're still all being expected to have the same information. But some of that also is that, yes, we have all learning populations are diverse, but you don't have like students that really need a lot of extra support and structure that might need like more instructions perhaps at their desk or given a preview of what we're going to learn today because maybe their reading and writing ability is lower or something like that. We don't have that, but this is still all right, so this candidate environment is like individual collaboration, learning, social interaction. Again, this is a lot like the last one. You have the expectations. You also put them in groups where they would be able to collaborate a little bit more proficiently. Because if you have those highest kids with those lowest kids, they may not be able to work together, or they could be frustrating each other. You could separate them into different groups, but the way that you have them, this is one strategy that you can use, and it's fine.
I'm still like testing it out, like whether it's working or not. If it never worked this way, I would change it like into different types of grouping.
And that's a good reflection. See how this works. See and I think for this type of individual group working, that this might be a good way, because then you can stay with these ones, these lower kids that are struggling a little bit more, and give them a little bit more individual attention, where this group doesn't need really a lot of teacher help. They can do this all on their own. And this group right here, with just a few questions pulling you back a little bit, will be fine. Okay. Then you establish a student-centered classroom, which students participate in decision making. They engage in exploration and mention work, and they work collaboratively and independently. So that lesson all on its own totally meets this, because they're able to collaborate, but they can still make their own decisions and still kind of come up with some of the structure that they want for this, but yet they work as a group, and they're still able to have some autonomy, but then also work within the group. And then it's totally about them and what they can do and exploring and that type of thing. Okay, does the candidate have established norms and procedures that lead to engage students maximum time on task and logical management of classroom space? I think you did a really good job at this. Having your lesson plan on PowerPoint is really great, because you're not wasting any time writing on the board. You can have your objective in there. You can have everything, all your instructions in there. Everything is right there, and the students can see it. So that's not wasting time by writing on the board. Then you passed out your materials. It was really fast. I didn't even have time to time it because you got them out so quickly. And you just had everything laid out and there, just how it's supposed to be. And you use the students to gather materials, to hand out materials, and to clean up, which is a great right there. You have students in there, use them as a resource also. And it makes things really fast. So I thought you were doing really well at that.
Thank you.
Okay, so on your feedback, basically says what we've talked about already. The only thing that I would say that needs improvement on this, and this could have just been, I saw the last lesson, but I think I missed the middle lesson, because it wasn't one that I was going to observe you on.
It's the working on the, it's the same thing like working on the acrylic.
Right. But so I saw your instructions, and they were good, and I started walking around, and I was asking kids questions, a couple, and I might have hit the one group that was just still having this little bit of a struggle. They weren't quite sure what they were supposed to be doing. Like they knew that they were working in the mixed media. They were like, well, we have to decide which mixed media to use, and I was like, for what? I don't know. So there was some kind of disconnect with they're making a project that they're going to have a final project. So I think maybe just somewhere in there something needed to happen. But then I went to another table and they got it, and they were collaborating and they were working on it. So this could have just been this team with a little extra help.
Yeah.
Just a suggestion, just to help the students, give them an example of what they need to accomplish by the end of the class. So what a finished product would look like. Now, I'm not meaning their art piece, their final art piece, but for that class, they were supposed to come up with a plan, is this correct? For what they wanted to make with their, which mediums that they were going to use, correct? For their project. So they needed to have that all written down, kind of laid out. Was that the objective? Yeah. So for that, I would just have, by the end, this should all be filled out, similar to this. And then then they're like, okay, that's what this needs to look like at the end. Because the kids are like, what do we write here? Do we write this here? They're still working, they're doing what they're supposed to, but that was just, But that's just a suggestion. It's one thing you could just add to it, and then it would be great. And then that's it.
Thank you.
I thought that the lesson went really well. I was impressed with all of the planning you had done. The preparation was there. And then you were able to give them the information that they needed, give them their instructions. Instructions were on the board. Everything got handed out quickly. Students got working. And they were creating and working with art.
Thank you.
So I think that was wonderful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.